host, The Stephen A. Smith Show, starts right now.
Welcome to hour number 2 of the Stephen A. Smith Show, right here with you over the airwaves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News. 250 plus markets across the United States of America. Check your AM, FM dial nearest you. Plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM Channel 80. Plus ESPN Radio simulcast over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. The Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by Credit Karma. Get your truly free credit scores and free credit monitoring from Credit Karma today. That's Credit Karma, K-A-R-M-A. Get knowing. Also, need seats to a game? Download the Vivid Seats app and enter promo code CHAMPS at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Don't buy just any seat. Get a Vivid seat. Always an honor and privilege to have my next guest on the line, my buddy, an extraordinary analyst on the sport of college basketball and all things basketball as far as I'm concerned. You can catch him on any sports center. You can catch him on college basketball game day. You can catch him calling games because it's what he does. He's exceptional at it. Arguably the best in the business. The one and only Jay Billis, my buddy, is live right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio, ESPN News. What's up, man? How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Stephen A. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Let's get right to it because we saw Purdue and Tennessee go at it last night, the number 3 and 2 seeds respectively in the South region. Purdue ends up winning 99-94 over Tennessee, the 3 seed beating the 2 seed. We saw the play near the end of the game where a foul was called on that 3-point shot. What were your thoughts?
You know, it's really the call that could have gone either way. If it hadn't been called, I don't think anybody outside of a Purdue fan would have been bothered by it because it was offense-initiated contact. But since there was contact, I don't think that many people are bothered by it either. I think, honestly, Stephen A., I think if you had put a bunch of officials in a room and said, all right, this play was called a foul, justify it, they would have all justified it. But then if you would have taken another group of officials and said this was a no call, they would have justified that too. You can fly by a shooter. The rule says you can fly by a shooter, and if a player kicks his leg out, it's not a foul. And I felt like that's what happened, and I think you could see it was minimal contact because Carson Edwards landed in the exact same spot he took off from. So, look, I'm not bothered by the call, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think it was correct either. I would have been fine with a no call. I think that was the best way to go.
Jay Billis, when I'm looking at Purdue, I'm looking at a team that was the number 3 seed. They beat Old Dominion by about 13. They blitzed Villanova, the reigning national champions, by about 26. Then they come and they beat Tennessee at number 2. I did not see this coming. That's typical during the NCAA tournament. There's usually a team that surprised you. But how much should we be surprised, actually, by what we're seeing Purdue do in this tournament?
Probably not crazy surprised because they were the co-Big Ten champions along with Michigan State. They started out the season slowly in the non-conference and did not play particularly well, especially defensively. But this is where analytics gets you. You know, analytics tells you what you've done over the course of the year, but it doesn't necessarily tell you what you've done lately or what you're capable of doing. And in the last probably month and a half, Purdue has been one of the 2 or 3 best defensive teams in the country from a numbers standpoint. And they've been one of the better offensive rebounding teams over that period of time as well. And they've got one of the best players in the country, Carson Edwards, just had 42 against Villanova, and I think he's got 97 points in his 3 tournament games. So they're legit. They're really, really good. Do I think they're better than Gonzaga? I don't. Do I better? I don't.
Jay Billis, are you there? We lost you for a second. Are you there, Jay Billis?
But I don't think they're the best team, but they're capable of beating anyone.
Okay. Jay Billis right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. The game that I'm looking forward to, Jay, is North Carolina versus Auburn. I mean, I paid attention to Auburn. Obviously, they won 28 games this year, 28-9 overall. I'm looking at them and what they're capable of doing. I saw what they did to Tennessee in their conference tournament. Talk to me about this Auburn squad, because I got North Carolina winning the national championship. So that it's clear about what I think about them. But Auburn is obviously somebody not to be slept on. What are your thoughts about Auburn?
Auburn, another team, the last 10 games, they've been as good as anybody. And they've won 10 in a row. They're making 12 threes a game over that period. They've got a great backcourt. Jared Harper and Bryce Brown are as good as just about any backcourt. I wouldn't put them as number one, but they're in the top 5 or 6 of all backcourts. And it's funny, Stephen A. This game is between two teams that when they play other people, they are trying to get their opponent at their tempo. It will not be hard to do in this game because both of them want to get up and down. The difference is that Auburn tries to turn you over. They turn their opponents over about a 25% rate. So 1 out of every 4 possessions, they're forcing a turnover and taking it the other way, and they shoot a ton of threes. Carolina's more in the paint. And I think the difference is going to be on the glass. If Carolina gets a lot of offensive rebounds, they win. If Auburn competes on the glass and makes it close, like Carolina's out-rebounding their opponents by 25 in the tournament, by 10.5 overall during the season. If Auburn hangs on the glass, they win. If they don't, then I think Carolina can beat them, or will beat them.
Jay Billis, stay with me on this one about Carolina. I watched Cameron Johnson, all right, against Duke in the ACC tournament, and he was phenomenal in the first half. Disappeared somewhat in the second half. I look at a guy like Kobe White. This guy has the potential to be a top 10, maybe even a top 5 pick in the NBA draft, according to some folks. I like his skills. I like his moxie, but I think his dribble is too high. I might be being ultra critical, but it's from a positive perspective, recognizing their potential, but some things that could be an impediment to their success, particularly when they're vying for a national championship. What do you think about those two guys, their strengths and weaknesses, and what role they'll play in North Carolina, whether it be tonight or beyond?
Well, Cameron Johnson has to play well for Carolina to win. He's their best shooter, and you hear coaches say all the time, every time he shoots it, you think it's going in. Well, the reason with Cam Johnson you think it's going in is because it always does. He shoots almost 48% from three-point range.
Yep.
And he's every time he pulls up on a one dribble pull up, he drills it. If he's open, forget it. He's going to make it. And Kobe White is improved throughout the year. He's 6'5". And he is really, really good. I mean, the different thing about Carolina this year is they've got 3 or 4 different guys. When they grab a rebound, they just take it. So they play as fast as they ever have. Hopefully, Mr. Little will be healthy for them because that gives them another, great finisher and a guy who can offensive rebound, and he's so athletic. But I'm not bothered by Kobe White's high dribble. It's funny. I've looked over the course of the years. It seems like a lot of the best ball handlers in basketball have a high dribble. But he I think the speed at which they play and the fact that they can continue to get to the rim and they are relentless, I think it's just a question of whether they take good shots, Stephen A. Like when they settle for jump shots and they're not getting the ball into the lane and getting it to the rim, I think they can let teams hang around them. But I think you can measure a lot of that by how many free throws they shoot. If they're taking too many jump shots and not getting to the free throw line, not having that kind of balance, then they're a little bit more beatable. But really, it's only a few teams. Virginia's beaten them, and then Duke, and that's about it in the last couple of months. They've been excellent.
We're talking to the great Jay Billis right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Let me stay within the region because we got the Houston Cougars. This is a team that's won 33 games this year. This is a team that obviously won their conference with a 16-2 record. We know the job that Kelvin Sampson has done with them, but they're going up against Kentucky. I like this kid, Corey Davis. I like him a lot. Galen Robinson as well. What are your thoughts about Houston in terms of their legitimacy? I asked you this question on TV earlier this morning because a lot of times we see guys out of the SEC, out of the ACC conference and something like that, and we don't pay nearly as much attention to them as we should. But Houston, clearly, when you win 33 games, we need to pay attention to you, and I think it's time to pay attention to Houston. What are your thoughts about them?
Yeah, they're really tough, Stephen A. Like, they've been through it. They weren't the highest recruited guys. They were recruited, but they weren't recruited by everybody, those kind of guys. So they do play with a little bit of an edge to them. They've beaten really good teams this year. I mean, they beat LSU earlier in the year. They obviously beat Cincinnati, UCF. They beat just about everybody they played, really. But they're talented. They're deep. They're not all that big. They've got good athletes and good size, or decent size, not great size. but they're tough-minded, and they defend and they rebound at a really high level, and they can shoot it. So Armani Brooks is like a catch-and-shoot guy, not really a put-it-on-the-deck guy. And then Corey Davis Jr. is one of the best guards in the country, and he, he's a tough-minded player that doesn't take a backseat to anybody. They're not as well known, and I think that gives them a little bit of an edge. It fuels them. And I'll be interested to see how they do against Kentucky, because I think without P.J. Washington, if he's not able to play, or he's not able to play at a high level, I think Houston can win.
We talked about so many of these guys and what they could do and the potential to excel on the next level. What are your thoughts about P.J. Washington? This is a guy that averaged nearly 15 a game. He leads Kentucky in rebounding with 7.5. He shoots over 40, about 42%, 41.9 to be exact, from three-point range. He seems like a pretty damn good player, and you just spoke to his level of importance. How come we haven't heard more about P.J. Washington when we're talking about, just expectations of what someone may do on the next level?
Probably because he hasn't done it all year. He kind of turned it on in the middle of the year, where he became a primetime performer. He'd shown flashes before that where he'd have, 27 points, 16 rebounds or something like that. Then the next game he has 8 points, 4 rebounds or something. Right. And in middle of the year, he turned it on to be a superstar caliber player, and was as good as any big guy in the country, and really showed himself to be the most valuable player on that team. And without him playing at that level, I don't think Kentucky would be here, frankly, and be sort of a Final Four contender. I don't think he's in the sort of the Anthony Davis category where he's going to be a top 10 pick type deal. He's certainly not as good as Anthony Davis, but that's sort of the star caliber player. But I think he's going to be a good NBA player for a long time, as long as he stays healthy. And I think he's got the ability to continue to get better, because he's got a good touch, and he's a really good guy too. And so I think he'll fit in wherever he winds up getting drafted.
It's interesting that you brought up Anthony Davis, because I was going to bring that up in this context. Whether it's Anthony Davis, it's DeMarcus Cousins, it's stars like John Wall that have been at the Kentucky program. Derrick Rose didn't play at Kentucky, but he did play under Calipari at Memphis when Calipari was there. I'm thinking about the 29-6 record, the second place finish in the SEC this year. How do you feel about the job John Calipari has done, particularly when we talk about All-Americans, guys that are box office that we talk about? We've been talking about Zion. We've been talking about R.J. Barrett. We're talking about guys that have been at Duke. For once, we haven't been saying that about John Calipari's program, but he still got 29 wins. Talk to me about that.
I'm amazed by what Cal has done at Kentucky, Stephen A. When he first got there in 2010, and he had John Wall and Eric Bledsoe, DeMarcus Cousins, that whole crew, and went to the Elite Eight. Honestly, I didn't think it was possible. I thought sort of the idea in my old school thinking at the time that, well, you have all freshmen, you're going to pay a price for it. They're not going to be as prepared. When the lights go on in the tournament, the bright lights, they're not going to be as prepared as a senior-dominated team, that kind of thing. And that's been proven wrong. Now, you can make the argument that, Kentucky won in 2012, Duke won in 2015 with one-and-doners. You can make the argument, well, the older teams win more often. Well, of course they do, because you're taking two teams out against the field. Of course the field is going to do better. But I think if you look at the overall record of those two teams in the Final Fours and the national championship that Cal has, you'd be hard-pressed to say he'd do better if he had nothing but juniors and seniors like Villanova or North Carolina's had over the past several years. You could make the argument, hey, the older teams have done better. Well, maybe they've done better in a particular year, but over the course of time, very few teams, if any, can match what Duke and Duke and Kentucky have done with their younger players. It's just they're the only ones. Everybody else, they may have one and done player or something like that. Nobody's got 4. Nobody's got 5, whatever it is. It's really remarkable what Calipari's done.
I got to tell you, I think it's just as, if not more remarkable, what Roy Williams has done. And listen, I know, you played at Duke. You've got relationships with all of these folks, particularly Coach K, as well-deserved. Please don't get me wrong. But I'm looking at a guy like Coach K who was already an exceptional coach, already a champion, already a Hall of Famer. And then he had the benefit of coaching Team USA basketball in 2008, 2012, 2016. And yet Roy Williams has been right up the road at Carolina, winning almost as much as he has. I think it's absolutely phenomenal what Roy Williams has been able to do. at North Carolina, considering they both basically share the same backyard. Clearly, most of the All-Americans end up going to Coach K, and look what Roy Williams has done. What do you say to that?
I say, I agree 1,000% with everything you just said. I think Roy is one of the great coaches of all time, let alone his time. And if you look at, I think their recruiting was significantly hurt by that whole academic scandal that went on several years ago, because it dragged on forever and dragged the basketball program into it. Mm-hmm. And yet, despite that, he wound up maybe having a little bit of an older team as a result of it. He came within a shot, that Chris Jenkins shot, maybe of winning the 2016 championship that Villanova wound up winning. Then he won in 2017. He's been knocking at the door other years. I think he's got a great shot of winning it this year. I think he's shown he's won, since he's been in North Carolina, I think he's won more championships. Carolina's won more championships than Duke has. He's certainly done every bit as well in the ACC, if not more, as far as regular season championships and tournament championships and all that. So there's no question he's among the greatest coaches. And the job he's done this year, because in January, I was not – on January 12th, when they got housed pretty good by Louisville in the Smith Center, I didn't walk out of there saying, well, I'm going to be picking them to win the title. But when the bracket came out, I did. It just shows how far they've come in that 2-3 month period.
Jay Billis, let's transition to the West region, because we got Gonzaga, those Bulldogs. They've got 33 wins themselves this year, just like Houston. Hachimura and Clark, they could ball their NBA prospects. Hachimura is considered probably a top 5 prospect. How good is this Gonzaga team? I know they beat Duke very, very early in the season with Zion on the court, but it was still relatively early. Talk to me about the Gonzaga that you saw then to the Gonzaga that you see now. And what kind of threat do you consider them to be in terms of getting in Duke's way for a shot at the national title?
They're a legit threat. They're not as big as they were 2 years ago when they went to the championship game and lost to North Carolina. Remember, they had Zach Collins then, who's now in the NBA, and they had Przemek Karnowski, the big 7-footer from Poland. So they don't have that kind of bulk and size, but they do have athleticism. And Brandon Clark is the bulk of it because of his ability to block shots. And, he's a pogo stick jumper and a great rebounder. You hear this about players. You don't have to run a play for him, and that's true of Clark. He doesn't have any plays run for him, but he makes plays seemingly every time down the floor. And Rui Hachimura is a lottery pick, and big body. He can guard any position. So with both Clark and Hachimura, they can switch 1 through 5. They can switch out onto a point guard without a concern. So the thing that impresses me more about Gonzaga, they've always been good offensively, and they are this year, but they're way tougher on the defensive end than people give them credit for. I think they sort of get tagged with, they play in the West Coast Conference, and boy, they can really shoot it. And, they're the mid-major that can really shoot and pass. But they're good on the glass, and they do not get pushed around. They wind up, they pushed around Florida State, which to accept that physical challenge to out-rebound Florida State by 9, and for Brandon Clark to block 5 shots and play more above the rim than Florida State does, I think that was a pretty solid statement that Gonzaga is not only one of the big boys, they're one of the muscle big boys.
Just a couple more questions here for Jay Billis right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Texas Tech legit. 29 games, first in the Big 12, and just held Michigan to 44 points. 44.
Yeah, they're legit. They've got a kid, Jared Culver, who's another lottery pick who, sort of is he scores and assists on just about a little over half of their baskets, it seems like. And so Culver's really good. They've got a kid named Davide Moretti who's shooting it really well, good handler, good passer. Matt Mooney was a grad transfer, another guy that can shoot it. They were not very good offensively until about a month and a half ago. For the last month or so, they've been hitting about 10 threes a game. They didn't do it against Michigan. But, heck, Michigan was awful. So part of that was a good part of it was Texas Tech's defense. The other part of it was Michigan was just bad. But their offense has improved to the point where it's certainly not a liability for them, and it's not like they have to pitch a shutout in order to win. They can put points on the board too. But they're dangerous just because they stick to their identity. They're going to smash mouth you defensively, and they don't apologize for it. Do I think they're the best team? I don't. Mm-hmm. But they're still good enough to beat Gonzaga and good enough to move on.
Jay, as you watched UCF take Duke and Zion Williamson down to the wire, I mean, I looked at Zion, and you pointed it out on TV earlier today. That second jump of his is so explosive, 280 pounds. This dude is something special. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like him in college basketball. But as you thought the Duke Blue Devils was on the verge of potentially losing this game, what would that have done to the NCAA tournament and the college basketball overall for this season if Zion Williamson had gotten knocked out this past weekend?
Well, it would have contributed to somebody's narrative and agenda about one and done, some of these other things, and about hyping players and all that. But and certainly some people would have claimed, okay, well, I told you Duke wasn't for real, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But it certainly would have let a good bit of air out of the tires of the NCAA tournament. I mean, we've had record ratings this year in college basketball, and I know CBS is experiencing record ratings right now for the tournament. And I think you'd be naive to think that's not directly related to Zion Williamson. There are other reasons for it, but Williamson is the biggest reason. And it just goes to show you that players matter. It's not just about, sort of this old axiom about the name on the front of the jersey. I mean, it's not the name on the front. It's both. The players matter. And when your team's winning and you have good players, people watch more. And when you have superstars, they really watch more. And Zion Williamson is a superstar.
And I was getting ready to ask you, Jay, you've seen many, many, many guys come through college basketball throughout your years covering this sport. Talk to me real quickly about, have you seen anything like this kid? Is he as special as advertised? I've seen him in person. I know he is in my mind. What about yours?
I've never seen anything like him on a basketball floor, Stephen A., on any level. When I saw him play in Canada this last summer, I was telling people, hey, wait till this guy will be on SportsCenter every night in the top 10. He'll dominate the SportsCenter top 10. And we're not going to have to explain it after a while. Once you see it, you will be hooked and you'll know it. And, I think we're trying to make comparisons, and that's what we do. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not getting on anybody about it. But there's no comp for this guy. You are saying, well, he's like Charles Barkley with this added, or a more explosive Charles. We have to add to it. There's nobody that's ever been like this guy. It doesn't mean he's the best player that I've ever seen, because he's not. But he's truly unique, and there's never been a guy like him, and I'm not sure we'll see his like again.
It's true. He is unique. He's box office, and he's going to be the #1 overall pick. We all know it. Who would be your number 2? Ja Morant, R.J. Barrett. Who would be your number 2, Jay Billis?
Right now, Stephen A., it would be R.J. Barrett, and it would be largely because I think he's been a little bit overshadowed by Zion. But if you switch spots, it would be Ja Morant being overshadowed by him. He actually played AAU ball on the same team as Zion Williamson in South Carolina. Ja Morant did. But R.J. Barrett is a legit 6'5", 6'6", left-handed, can handle and pass. He's had a triple-double earlier this year, one of the best defensive rebounders in the college game, irrespective of size. And I think he's a James Harden-type player. Now, I happen to think that Ja Morant's a Russell Westbrook-type player. So we've got 3 guys in this draft that I think are I don't want to say surefire, but they're all-star caliber talents. And it's just a question of what's going to be best for a team rather than whether these guys could play, because all 3 of them can really play.
Very last question. Who do you have going to the Final Four, sir, to refresh our memory and winning it all?
I had North Carolina beating Duke in the final. I had Virginia going, and I had Michigan, but Michigan kind of let the air out of that one with the way they shot the ball. But I didn't have all 4 #1 seeds. I probably should have.
Wow. Yeah, I had Duke, North Carolina, Gonzaga, and Tennessee. And Tennessee obviously lost in overtime, so that got next. That's what I had, Jay.
Yeah, and it's Stephen, to have this many quality teams make it this far and high seeds, you're not going to have all everybody make it, all the 2s and all that stuff. Somebody's going to get clipped, and Tennessee had a great chance to win it, they just didn't, and that literally was a coin flip game that could have gone either way.
Jay, appreciate the great work. As always, appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. We'll be watching you, buddy. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
All right. My man, the one and only, the great one himself, Jay Billis, does an outstanding job for many, many years for ESPN. Always honored to have him right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. 888-SAY-ESPN is the number to call up. That's 888-729-3776. We'll get back to your calls and more in a minute on the NCAA tournament, on the Lakers, on Major League Baseball, on some NFL talk involving Antonio Brown, the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Eagles. The list goes on and on. Don't touch that dial. It's Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way, if you haven't tried the delicious high-quality meat from Butcher Box, you're going to be blown away. Butcher Box brings you the meat the way it's meant to be, so you can get all of the benefits you're supposed to get. Unbelievable flavor and unparalleled nutrition. They work closely with the best farms and companies committed to raising animals humanely. From gas-fed beef to free-range organic chicken to wild-caught sockeye salmon from Bristol Bay, Alaska. Butcher Box